SWEIMEH, Jordan. Just days ago, the former strongman of Yemen turned against his most recent allies and publicly denounced them as a coup militia. They struck back on Monday, killing him and spreading a video of his lifeless body dumped unceremoniously in the back of a pickup truck. The death of the former strongman, Ali Abdullah Saleh, brought to a grim end the career of a wily politician who combined charisma, duplicity and brute force to remain a giant in the politics of his impoverished Arabian country for decades. Mr. Saleh's death signaled a turning point in the country's war by shattering the alliance between his loyalists and the rebels known as the Houthis, who had taken over the capital, prompting a punishing bombing campaign by Saudi Arabia and its allies. That political fracturing could make it harder for the parties to negotiate an end to the conflict, analysts said, while renewed fighting in the capital, Sana'a, could worsen the humanitarian crisis afflicting Yemen, which the United Nations has called the world's worst. 7 million Yemenis, nearly a third of the population, are at risk of starving. Millions more need emergency food aid. His being killed like this is going to deepen the conflict. I think the war could become more fierce. This just adds more layers of revenge, said April Longley Ali, a Yemen analyst with the International Crisis Group. Like him or hate him, Saleh's death in this way is more than likely going to bring more pain for Yemen. Throughout his career, which included 33 years as president, Mr. Saleh deftly manipulated the competing demands of Yemen's tribes, politicians and foreign allies like the United States to make himself the country's most towering political figure. He compared governing Yemen to dancing on the heads of snakes and proved remarkably good at it for many years. But when the uprisings known as the Arab Spring began in 2011, angry Yemenis flooded public squares to call for political change and his ouster. After dispatching his forces to brutalize protesters and surviving an assassination attempt via a bomb hidden in a mosque pulpit, Mr. Saleh agreed to leave office in 2012 in an agreement negotiated by foreign powers who hoped he would slip into a quiet retirement abroad. He did not, instead returning to Yemen to rally his followers and form an unlikely alliance with the Houthis, who stormed Sana'a in 2014 and later forced the internationally recognized government that had replaced Mr. Saleh into exile. His death came at the hands of the same rebels he had used to facilitate his return to political relevance. Sources confirm Saleh was killed after all. Nadwe Dazari, a non-resident senior fellow at the Project on Middle East Democracy in Washington, wrote on Twitter as news of his death spread. The man who danced his whole life on the heads of snakes was killed today by one of his pet snakes. Others observed that Mr. Saleh had never been held accountable for the rampant human rights abuses during his decades in power. Saleh should have died in prison after his countless victims had the opportunity to confront him in court, said Letta Taylor, a senior researcher at Human Rights Watch.